let's continue our lectures on human rights and media tracking. This afternoon we are going to tackle another lecture among the series of lectures I am delivering within this GIAN program. So this lecture is entitled Non-Government Organizations and Right-Based Work, or Human Rights-Based Approach. So I think that we have been talking about so many issues, especially this morning we talked about the question of civil society, the role of civil society in promoting and in caring for human rights. So this afternoon we're going to dig into the work and the role, also the challenges that non-government organizations of course face, and at the same time we're going to study some international examples and local examples. Well, so I opt for beginning this session by this quotation, and this is part of, it was part of the statement addressed in the 67th edition of the Civil Society Conference that took place or that was organized by the United Nations. So that statement, of course, or maybe the theme of that conference, of the 67th edition Civil Society Conference, it was about we do peoples, okay, so we should find global solutions to global problems. So this is only global solutions can address global problems. Okay, so as I have said, so this statement of course was the theme of the 67th edition of the conference, of the Civil Society Conference, that was of course organized by the United Nations indeed. This only global solutions can address global problems. So I think what you can, for example, deduce from this quote or from this statement is that it emphasizes again what we have talked about. It means the interconnectedness of challenges, like for example many problems that our planet faces, like climate change, like pandemics, for example, human rights violations, economic inequality, racial discrimination, social injustice. All these things, of course, the United Nations believe that they transcend national borders, and they require at the same time cooperation beyond individual nations. So these issues, they are very complex, and of course they affect numerous countries and regions simultaneously at the same time. And sometimes, of course, they are driven by forces such as globalization, trade, and international migration. So this quotation really, it's very, I do believe it's very relevant and very suitable to what we are going to handle in this lecture, since we are going to talk about an approach which is, of course, labeled as the human rights-based approach. That non-government organizations use in order, of course, to face those challenges. Well, in the light of what I am saying, so this lecture aims to achieve these objectives. Number one, define and understand the right-based work approach in development. So this is a very important approach that we are going to see. We're going to define it, and we're going, what do we mean by right-based work approach? And at the same time, we're going to see case studies. It means how non-government organizations implement this. Again, we talk all the time about implementation. So how non-government organizations all over the world, how they implement this approach, which is based work approach. Well, the second objective, we're going to explore the role of non-governmental organizations, and we're going to see to what extent, of course, they are they succeed in promoting human rights through human rights-based work. The third objective is that we're going to identify key components and principles of a rights-based approach, where we are going to see what do you mean by this human rights-based approach, and we're going to see some key features of this approach. analyze some examples. This is what concerns us, is that we are going to study, we are going to discuss and see to what extent non-government organizations all over the world, to what extent they employ these human rights-based approaches in their work to address social, economic, political, and also environmental issues. So we are going to see so many examples, of course, that tackle this issue in a very efficient way. Also, we are going to assess at the end maybe of our lecture. So we are going to assess the challenges and benefits associated with implementing a rights-based approach. So this is something also very important. We may also cite some recommendations that our communities, for example, may use in order to implement this approach successfully. So in the first instance, what do you mean by this approach, which is a right-based approach? So a right-based approach is an approach, of course, that integrates. It is an approach to development, rather to human development. It aims, of course, to integrate human rights norms, principles, and standards into development work. So this is the human rights based approach. So it integrates everything, for example, all our norms, principles, our community standards into development work. We are going to see in details. So I'm going to just show you the key maybe features of this right-based approach. So as you see here, empowerment. So it is about empowering individuals, particularly marginalized communities, by asserting their rights and ensuring, of course, their duties in their societies. At the same time, it is about participation also. So participation is very important. Why? Because it ensures it is about ensuring that marginalized people, for example, marginalized groups, they are actively involved in the decision-making processes that affect them. So you see, a human rights-based approach is about integrating people, integrating norms, integrating standards into, of course, into the development, into human development. There is also a human rights-based approach. It's about accountability, which means holding governments, for example, non-government organizations, and even other institutions accountable for upholding this question of human rights obligations. It is also non-discrimination. So, of course, we talk all the time that human rights, if they are to be implemented, they should be very inclusive, they should be very inalienable, they should be very interdependent, for example, and indivisible. So this is it exactly. Even, for example, this approach, human rights-based approach, so it is non-discriminatory approach. So it integrates all the segments of society, and this is, of course, its major aim. So let's see now the role of non-government organizations in the right-based work. So it is very, when we talk about this approach and human rights, for example, non-government organizations, even, for example, the media. So sometimes we find all these elements, they are amalgamated and they are intertwined and intersected. Sometimes we cannot talk about this without mentioning the other, because one of course complements the other. So let's see the role of non-government organizations. So, for example, they empower communities. So, of course, they empower communities through what? Through boosting, for example, education, fostering training, for example, and resources. They help also individuals understand their rights, develop sometimes even the skills to claim them. So this is something very empowerment in non-government organizations. We are going to see some very concrete examples to crystallize your understanding about this issue. Also, it's about advocates for policy change. So how? So I think that we have also tackled this thing okay beforehand. So it's about sometimes even it helps the government, for example, if they would like to, government members, if they would like to reform a law, to revise a law, for example, in order to uphold human rights, while upholding, of course, human rights standards. Also, it monitors, or non-government organizations, they monitor and they report at the same time, because this is what we do appreciate in the work of non-government organizations, is that they are not just detecting, for example, human rights violations or abuses, but they write reports, and this is something very important. So they lead to us a trace, okay, that we can study maybe later on. So many non-government organizations, of course, they act as watchdogs, monitoring human rights abuses and sometimes even holding duty bearers accountable. Also, they collaborate and they support. So this is, of course, one of the major roles of non-government organizations. So often they are partners with grassroots organizations. They are also they help international agencies to expand the reach and impact of their rights-based initiatives. So this is grosso modo, of course, the role of non-government organizations. So they empower communities, they advocate for policy change, they monitor and report, they collaborate, and they support, of course, the community. And believe me, the role of those non-government organizations, it's very seminal and very necessary. Not just very important, but it's necessary. Sometimes the population is in dire need of such non-government organizations. Why? Because even if we can talk about their work in general, so their work is very diverse, and it touches many spheres, many domains. Sometimes you find that government organizations, sometimes they have this multidisciplinary field of work, and this is something that we can appreciate. Sometimes you find them very specialized in either in economy or social spheres, for example, or cultural spheres. And sometimes you find like international, for example, and government organizations, you find them multidisciplinary. It means they touch upon many topics, diverse topics in diverse contexts also, especially when they are global non-government organizations. So they can study many countries, and they can study diversity of people, and via, of course, diverse platforms and diverse media. So this is what signifies, of course, their importance, and this is what makes them really very necessary in our society, because they are also partners of our governments. They are like watchdogs at the same time, but sometimes they can even maybe create projects. Sometimes even, so they are very creative, and the members, sometimes even you find the members of those non-government organizations very creative members. So they collaborate in our society, not just in monitoring or sometimes even detecting human rights abuses. No, sometimes they have this positive function in the sense that they can suggesting, proposing projects, for example, like environmental projects. Why not? Sometimes even they can suggest legal reforms. Sometimes because they monitor the government, so they see the weakest point of the government, the strongest point of the government. So they can have this force of suggesting, propounding, like laws, for example, or reforms, even revising revising laws, even sometimes evaluating laws if the law is up to date or is out to date. So this is something which we can, for example, say about the role of non-government organizations worldwide, especially because they work with this very important seminal approach, which is a human rights based approach. And this is something very important because we find those non-government organizations, we find them very they are very near, and they are all the time beside the population, beside people. Sometimes they know what the population needs. They know people's needs, for example. They know people's illnesses. They know people's, for example, sometimes suffering. So it depends on the sphere that on which the non-government organization focuses on. As I have said, sometimes there is this multidisciplinary paradigm, and sometimes there are some, of course, non-government organizations which are, of course, very specific, and they touch on one just sphere. Well, so of course those non-government organizations, so they are characterized by some features or components. So we are going to see those components. So they identify, or these are just some key features of this right-based approach that, of course, that is used by those non-government organizations. So what is the importance? So here lies the importance of right-based approach. Why? Because it helps identifying rights and duty bearers. So this, of course, what does it mean? It means that using or this approach, of course, requires non-government organizations to identify specific rights being addressed. For example, so they identify, for example, right to health, right to the environment, for example, right to education, right to clean water, and so on and so forth. And it helps also to clarify who is responsible for upholding these rights. So this is also one of the major features of this approach. And this approach really is very it benefits, of course, non-government organization, and it facilitates, of course, their duties. Also, empowering rights holders. So this is also another core principle of this human rights-based approach. It is about empowering individuals, communities to become active participants, active rights holder. This involves also like educating people about their rights, providing resources sometimes to claim their rights, and creating platforms for participation and advocacy. Ensuring accountability. So this is also accountability mechanism. It is also very crucial in this human rights based approach. Why? Because it often works to establish monitoring frameworks. Sometimes it uses even legal tools to challenge abuses. Sometimes it works within governmental and international bodies to treat policies that uphold rights. So this is what we mean by, or this is the key feature of ensuring, of course, accountability. There is also another key feature focusing on participation and inclusion. So this, of course, emphasizes participatory processes that engage communities directly, communities which are, for example, affected by development projects. So they engage those communities, of course, to benefit from those development projects for sometimes, and sometimes even this key feature is about ensuring some solutions in very specific context, and this is something very important. And also sometimes they find solutions to marginalized voices, vulnerable people, and they encourage them, of course, to speak, and they give them opportunities to be heard. Another key feature of a human rights-based approach is that it's addressing raising consciousness also, or addressing systematic inequalities. So raising consciousness, so this is something also very important. So of course they raise the consciousness of the population about their rights. So population should know, for example, their rights, and at the same time, this is the first thing. And this is what I emphasize so many times. If you don't know your rights, if you are not aware of what's going on, for example, around you, so you cannot find solutions at all. So the first step, of course, to enjoy your rights is that you know your rights, and this is one of the major key features of this human rights based approach, is that it raises the population's consciousness about their rights and about everything that has, of course, relationship with their communities. Also addressing systematic inequality. So sometimes this human rights based approach has the function of deconstruction. It deconstructs or this constructive function. How? It deconstructs, it dismantles structures that perpetuate discrimination. Like, for example, gender inequality. So sometimes you find an institution of gender inequality. Why? This is due to what? Due to the patriarchal system. So of course, this addressing systematic inequality. So it means that it has that function of dismantling. Okay, dismantling, deconstructing. Okay, the systematic, for example, or the systematic structures that perpetuates, of course, like gender inequality, for example. Sometimes even there are some structures of racism also. So this key feature of course helps to dismantle the systematic institution of racism, sometimes even economic marginalization. So there are many systematic inequalities in our society, and this approach, it addresses, or this human rights based approach, so it addresses those systematic inequalities, like children, for marginalization of children, marginalized like vulnerable people, gender inequality, racial discrimination, also the systematic institution sometimes of racism. And sometimes even it advocates for political change, or sometimes even it advocates for policies change. Okay, so or strategies change. So this is also something that this key feature addresses. So, and this is also very, very, very crucial, because as I have said before, this human rights based approach, so it addresses these issues. Sometimes even it helps reforming strategies and policies. Now let's see what are, of course, the benefits of a right-based approach for non-government organizations. So you see, so the link, the interconnectedness between the right-based approach and non-government organization. Now we will see what is the benefit when non-government organization, for example, is using or working with this approach. So it is a long-term, of course, impact. So we cannot talk about a short-term impact. It's a long-term. It's a long vision. Why? Because it addresses structural issues and it leads to more sustainable outcomes. There is also empowerment and social justice. So this is the benefit. Sometimes, of course, it has this goal. So those are the benefits after working and after. So we have those benefits. So it promotes social equity. by focusing on marginalized people, marginalized groups. Sometimes also it fosters society, it fosters social change. Sometimes also it provides opportunities to marginalized people, to voiceless people. And this empowerment, this is something very important in our society, especially empowering marginalized groups. There is also stronger accountability mechanism. So this is also one of the benefits of this rights-based approach for non-government organizations. So as I have said, this it increases accountability among governments, corporations, for example, and at the same time it works also on ethical practices. Okay, another benefit, increased participation and ownership. So here, of course, we talk about community involvement in this human rights based approach initiatives. This, of course, increases their investments in their societies. Of course, it works, for example, to advance like development projects, human being development project, for example. So this is what we mean by increased participation and ownerships. Well, so I think that now, grosso modo, generally speaking, so we have talked about the role of this human rights-based approach, and we have also we shed some light on the benefits of this human rights approach in relationship to the work of non-government organizations. So I think that this approach does matter in, of course, promoting and boosting education, boosting healthcare, for example, boosting peace. At the same time, there are many non-government organizations, of course, that are very specialized on promoting peace all over the world. Of course, boosting also social development, economic development, and political progress also. Of course, there are many challenges that, for example, this that the implementing or the implementation of this human rights-based approach, for example, faces like measurement and evaluation. So sometimes it's very hard, for example, to just measure the evaluation. Why? Because sometimes this human rights based approach, it focuses on systematic change, which can be very difficult to measure and evaluate. So sometimes it is very, very hard to evaluate, for example, the social change, to evaluate the systematic change, and to trace to what extent, for example, the society is developed. To what extent it's very hard to find sometimes even meaningful indicators. So this is one of the challenges that this approach, of course, faces. Sometimes even it finds like challenges concerning participation. Sometimes even there is resistance concerning participation. There is also, as you see here, resistance from duty bearers also. So sometimes this approach cannot have some for example, cannot have cannot collaborate with the government, and sometimes it finds many stumbling blocks. Okay, before it, and this is also one of the major challenges that this approach faces. Sometimes even it can face many problems. Okay, that handicaps, of course, its work. Funding and resources also. So this approach sometimes it often requires, of course, substantial resources for advocacy, for legal action, for monitoring, for securing something. But for security also, but it's very hard sometimes to find sufficient funding. So sufficient funding sometimes can be very, very challenging, especially when donors prefer short-term tangible results, because this is one of the major key features, as we have seen. It's the long-term outcome. It's a long-term vision, and this is something very, very interesting, because we cannot have short-term results. Sometimes if we would like something to be very efficient, very important, and very effective, so of course you should set up long-term goals in order to have a very good, of course, very good results indeed. Cultural and social bias also, so it's about sometimes even it's very hard when this approach, for example, is facing diverse cultural contexts. It's very sometimes they are very complex. So and it's very hard to detect all the problems in diverse, complex cultural context. And this is, of course, again, it is one of the major challenges that this approach faces. So as we have seen, so this question of non-government organizations working with this human rights based approach. So this is a very efficient, of course, tool in order to promote and boost social, economic, political development in our communities. But of course, the same question that we all the time, for example, negotiate is that how can we reach those goals? How can we implement, for example, the theoretical framework that those non-government organizations, or this approach, for example, this approach advances? So we should all the time seek examples and learn from examples also all over the world, in order to follow their trend, and in order to learn from them and learn from their mistakes also. So this is in, if we would like to, if we aspire to be like full providers of our communities, of our nations, of our societies, if we aspire to be active individuals, active persons in our communities, so we should, of course, we should know in the first instance, because without knowledge we can reach nothing. But with knowledge, when you know, so when you get knowledge, so of course this is the first step that will, of course, pave the way for change, for a better change in our communities and in our world. So I will provide you now with some concrete examples in order to throw some light on how those non-government organizations, either at the international level, or either at the national level, how they work, and what is exactly their mission, and how they make use of this human rights based approach. Now let's see some international examples. So like Oxfam. This is Oxfam. It's a non-government organization. It's about poverty alleviation and social justice. So this international organization, it promotes economic and social rights by advocating for fair wages, gender equality, for example, and access to essential services. It also mobilizes communities to demand like policies that address inequalities and improve livelihoods. This is a very crucial organization, and of course it works within this human rights based approach, because it advocates for fair wages, for wages especially for marginalized people like women, for example, salary and women's wages. Also, it mobilizes people, so it's also about mobilization, mobilizing communities to demand, of course, their rights, to advocate for the rights, and to have their own place in their own societies. So this Oxfam, so it works within this with the human rights or human rights based approach, or just the RBW, it means rights based work or based approach. Well, another example also, it's at the international level. It's all the time an organization. It's the national. Sorry, this is the local. It's the local organizations. This is the local organization working also with the human rights based approach, and this is the National Union of Moroccan Women. As I have said, either at the level of international sphere or at the level of national sphere. So you have many, or there are many organizations, for example, that work within or with this human rights based approach. So as you see here, so this is the National Union of Moroccan Women, UNFM, so founded in 1969. It dates back to 1969, so it's an old organization, and it is a prominent Moroccan organization, and it is also accredited by the United Nations and the African Union. This organization, it works to promote women's rights, social empowerment, gender equality, and it was created under the patronage of Princess Lalla Amina, and actually it is presided by Her Royal Highness Lalla Maryam. And of course, this association has multidisciplinary. It is about women, but it has multidisciplinary, of course, approaches, multidisciplinary issues. It tackles multidisciplinary issues. Also, this association, it deals with this gender equality in the first instance, and really it has managed many times, for example, to just encourage the government, like to revise the family code or the Mudawana, for example. Also, it has really an impact on various social and legal reforms. Okay, so this is the major work of this very old indeed and very credible non-profit or non-government organization. So there is also among the local organizations. So I have provided you with these examples because I would like you to see concretely to what extent, for example, communities, countries all over the world, what extent they are working within with this human rights based approach, and to what extent they are sometimes even successfully, of course, both change in their societies, either at the international level or at the national local level. And I provide you examples from the Moroccan kingdom because this is my country, and I think that I know what's going on, and I know better. So therefore, I think that I am in a position that can, for example, tackle these local examples. At the same time, my purpose is not just to provide you with the examples from Morocco, but just to show you that Morocco is among many other countries, for example, that are really leaders, okay, or that are leading the world in these issues, especially when it comes to the question of human rights and the question children's rights, women's rights also, so climate change, environmental issues, so all these things, so they are really taken seriously by the Moroccan kingdom. So therefore, and the proof that they are taken seriously, the proof is that the establishments of many organizations all over Morocco, from north to south, so, and the establishment also of non-government organizations. I'm just provide you with a few, with the, like a few examples, but there are so many in almost all Moroccan cities. You will find those organizations. Well, so let's continue to be very concrete. So this is again, it's the Moroccan Association of Family Planning, and this association, the AMPF, it is under the honorary presidency of Her Royal Highness Lalla Mariam, and the effective presidency is. Or the effective president is Mrs. Zahra Mzian Amour. So this Moroccan association also, it is a non-government, non-profit organization, and it was established in 1971 and recognized as a public utility in 1972. And this organization also, non-government organization, it is working with the human rights-based approach, and of course it is a member of the International Federation for Family Planning. And also it engages in many civil society, for example, planning many civil society activities, and it has a great impact on Moroccan society, especially concerning the issue of family health care, for example, asserting individuals or viewing individuals without discrimination, like women, young people, men, and so especially the unserved. So this is an organization, of course, non-profit or non-government organization that, of course, works within this approach, within the human rights-based approach, because this is the major aim, is promoting family healthcare, for promoting family rights in general. Sometimes we talk about women's rights, men's rights, and children's rights, but this is the whole family. If we talk about the family rights, so we mean the man, the woman, and the children also, especially in our societies. Well, another international organization, so this is at the international level. This is also it's a very important organization. It's about children. It's save the children. This is about children's rights, health, and education. As you see here, and what you can, for example, notice is that those organizations or non-government organizations, for example, they are sometimes multidisciplinary in their work, and sometimes they are very specialized, like this one, Save the Children. So these are non-government organizations. Of course, it deals with children's rights, with children's right to healthcare, children's right to education. So, and at the same time, it advocates for government policies, of course, that protects children, and monitoring the state's obligation in areas like education and healthcare access. So this is also a very important organization. At a local level, always, so there is this very prominent, indeed, this is a very significant non-government organization in Morocco, the Democratic Association of Moroccan Women. Of course, this is the quotation that you have here is by Fatima Al-Marnisi, and this quotation is also it inspires the work of this association, in addition, of course, to a human rights-based approach. So Fatima Al-Marnisi is a very famous author, sociologist, and feminist militant, Moroccan, of course, Moroccan author, sociologist, feminist militant, and she has published so many books about women's issues. So she is very significant author. She is a very outstanding Moroccan author. Well, according to her, and this is a quotation that of course inspires Moroccan women and inspires, I think, women all over the world who advocate for their own rights. According to her, there are two prerequisites to growing wings. The first is to feel encircled. So this is it. When you feel encircled, so in order to grow your wings. And the second is to believe that you can break the circle. So you see, this is a very significant, very symbolic quotation. That, of course, if it signifies something, it signifies that of course, even though women sometimes they feel marginalized, or even they feel voiceless sometimes even they feel like silence, but they can challenge. Sometimes that silence will lead them, of course, to just go beyond. They can go beyond, they can take the challenge, and they can grow their wings, and they can break the silence, they can break the circle, they can break their imprisonment. So we have already tackled this question of feminism, and we have tackled those issues of how women, of course, took the challenge, of how they have gone beyond marginalization and beyond the injustice in order to promote their own rights. So this democratic association of Moroccan women, of course, also it works within this framework of human rights based approach, within this paradigm, and it addresses issues. It's about women, so it addresses issues of gender based violence, for example, sometimes even legal reforms for gender equality, sometimes even socio-economic empowerment for women. Sometimes it also actively collaborates with policymakers to influence legal reforms, like to refine the family code, to refine the mudawana. Sometimes even it tackles issues like gender-based violence. So it's about women and everything that is about women. So it is, of course, tackled by this democratic non-government association, the Democratic Association of Moroccan Women. So it is a very significant organization in Morocco, and it is, of course, accredited, and it has a very long history, and it has an impact on our societies, and especially because it deals with very important issues that are related to promoting women socially, culturally, politically also. So it even if you access, I think you have the website of this organization. If you access the website of this organization, you will see to what extent it all the time, it is up to date all the time. It publishes many reports about the development of Moroccan women, either at the level of economy, society, or even politics. Now we find the women also invading the political arena by excellence, and they have their say concerning decision making. And this is, of course, thanks to the work of such organizations. So you see, as I have explained before, so those organizations, so really they play a very pivotal role in promoting human rights in general. Okay, human beings, and they also human beings, right? And they also foster human development, and this is something very important in our recent, or in our era. There is also another organization. So I have opted for all these organizations because this is the core of our lecture. It's about non-government organizations. So you should be acquainted with those organizations, and you should see to what extent they are very successful, of course, in their work, in their noble mission, especially when they implement and they work with the human rights based approach. This is also Beiti. It's a local Moroccan, of course, organization, non-government organization. It focuses on the rights of street children and children in vulnerable situations. It provides like shelter, education, psychological support. This is something also very important that non-government organizations, for example, tackles it, or they tackle. It's the psychological support. This is also something within their strategies and within their policies, along with, of course, legal assistance sometimes to protect children from abuse and from exploitations, from labor, for example. So this organization, which name is Beiti, as you see here. So it is, of course, it works within this paradigm of human rights based approach. Sometimes even it propounds like solutions, and sometimes even it raises the community's consciousness about the importance of caring for children. So as you see, all the organizations that were non-government organizations that we have seen now, some of them are very specialized, like Save Children or Save the Children. So they are specialized in saving the children, for example, promoting children's rights. Like this one, for example, in Morocco, Beiti. So this is also another focused, let's call it like this, focused non-government organization, because it deals with the question of vulnerable, the most vulnerable segments in our society, who are, of course, kids and children. So you see, sometimes you find like non-government organizations, which of course are not specified, but they tackle so many issues because they are multidisciplinary in their work. But here, for example, you find some that they are very specific, and they again, we will go back to this question of local context, because they take into consideration the local context. So the local context does matter in the work of those local non-government organizations. Of course, they work with this global human rights based approach, but at the same time they take into consideration the local context, and they take into consideration cultural specificities, cultural particularities, because each society has, of course, its own particularities. So it's very nice, for example, to see these organizations are working, for example, within this global human rights based approach or based work, but at the same time they work within, of course, their local context. So this is also something which I would like to emphasize in this context. Well, so let's see again other non-government organization, because this is the core of our lecture today. So this is the Union of Feminine Action. This is also another organization, which is, of course, it was founded in 1989, and it was founded to advocate for women's rights and for setting up gender equality among Moroccan women. This is also, as you see here, it's like the Democratic Association of Moroccan Women. This organization also is very specific. Why? Because it tackles gender equality. It tackles issues related to empowering women, for example, to know their claim, to know their rights, and at the same time to know how to speak about their plight. And this is also something which is very important, and this also shows how those organizations, how they work within this framework or this paradigm, which is, of course, a human rights based approach. Another organization, so we have a lot of organizations today, but this is it in order to get some to get enlightened about their work, because this is our aim, is to know how they use this human rights based approach in order to, of course, work effectively and in order to benefit their societies, because this is the aim. They should work hand in hand with government. They should be partners of governments in order, because they have one purpose, either the government or non-government associations. They have one purpose, which is setting up a better change in our society, which is promoting social, economic, cultural, and political rights of everyone in society without any discrimination, because their work is non-discriminatory, as we have seen before. Another very prominent association, and this is a foundation, also non-government foundation. And this time it's not about children, it's not about women, it's not about human, it's within human rights, but it's about environment. So this is also another example. So as I have this is in my mind, so I would like to diversify examples, to see examples from multidisciplinary non-government organization, then very specific, very particular non-government organization and their organizations and their work also. So this is the Mohammed Sist Foundation for Environmental Protection. It was founded in 2001 under the patronage of Princess Lalla Hasna. And this foundation is really a wonderful foundation, and it is accredited even by the United Nations. And this organization focused on environmental conservation. It focuses on setting up sustainable development. It operates also within the mission of raising environmental awareness among Moroccan people, fostering a culture also of environmental issues across Morocco from north to south. And also the objectives of this foundation or organization, it is also working within the paradigm of human rights based approach, and it aligns the goals of this organization. They align with international environmental standards. So it is accredited by the United Nations, and really the role that, for example, it exercises is very pivotal. It's very important, and it is all the time up to date. It is a very active organization, and it has had a great impact on promoting environmental consciousness among Moroccan people. And at the same time, there is to just encourage people to take care, especially Moroccan people, to take care of their environment. Princess Lalla Hasna has also set up like a reward or a prize, and this is an annual prize that people, for example, compete, or women, people all over Morocco, they compete in order to win and to get that prize. And the prize is for protecting the environment. Each year, for example, peoples or organizations, so they introduce their project, their environmental project, in order to win Lalla Hasna's prize, or this Mohammed VI Foundation award or prize. So those, as you have seen now, so those organizations, so they are very prominent because, of course, of their aims, noble mission, and so on and so forth, and at the same time because they use efficiently, this approach of human rights based work. So this is something very important, because they are promoting, of course, that their main aim is promoting and defending human rights all over the world, not just in their communities. So as I have said, all the local organizations, especially Moroccan organizations that they have introduced to you, so their objectives, of course, align with international standards, with the United Nations international standards of defending and protecting and monitoring human rights. Well, so as a conclusion, so I think we should, because we are part of our communities as individuals, as professors, as students, so we can, for example, have some recommendations. So I think we should invest in capacity. So this, because we do believe that this human rights based approach, it has really transformed the landscape of development work, not just in local communities but at the international level. It has also fostered, of course, social, economic, political change. It has also empowered the people with disabilities. It has empowered marginalized, silenced, voiceless people like women, for example, like minorities, like ethnic groups. So what we recommend is that they should invest in capacities, they should develop accountability mechanism, they should establish again and again very strong partnerships all over the world, and they should adapt to local context at the same time. So you see, wherever and whenever we talk about this question of like when I talked about development journalism, so I stress the local context here also. When we talk about non-government organization, yet it's very nice to have this global, for example, vision, and to have this global approach. That's very nice to work with the global approach. But it's without forgetting, and this is something which I stress and I emphasize here, without forgetting our local context, without forgetting our cultural particularities, our cultural specificities. So we are very, sometimes we should take into consideration our discrepancies, not just differences, but our discrepancies. Well, so this is the conclusion and the recommendations that we can, for example, devote in order to enhance maybe the work of non-government organizations within the paradigm of human rights-based approach. So at the end, I will show you a video about a human rights-based approach, and this video will again add to your understanding of what's the nature of this human rights-based approach. And at the same time, we will lead the discussion until the tutorial, okay? So we are going to maybe write like a comment, okay, on this video, but this is very relevant to the lecture of today. So you are going to watch this video and you are going to see concretely, in a very simple way, how the work of non-government organizations matter, and how it matters, and at the same time how this human rights-based approach is very efficient in promoting change and in elevating, of course, progress in our societies. So let's watch this video.
This is the story of two Pacific islands, one big and one small. The people on the small island love their home, but living there did have its difficulties. That's because most of the important facilities like the secondary school, hospital, health center, market, and local government office were located across the water. Getting there was often a challenge, especially for children, the elderly, pregnant women, and people with disabilities. Sometimes it could even be dangerous. One day, a representative from an international agency arrived and called the men in the community together in the community hall. He told them he had just the right solutions to their problems. The men nodded and said thank you, although it wasn't quite what they wanted. The people were patient, but a year later, the bridge had still not been built, and they continue to rely on the small risky boat for transport between the two islands. Just when the community was giving up hope, a representative from another agency came over from the big island and held a series of community meetings to better understand the community's needs, assets, and skills. She said to achieve lasting and equal development for all, active participation by all groups in the community was essential. She invited every member of the community to voice their needs and ideas. In the meetings, she talked about the community's rights to things like education, healthcare, an adequate standard of living, and their linkage to national laws, the Constitution, and globally agreed human rights standards. She shared research and information and conducted trainings with all the community groups to empower them with knowledge, skills, and confidence to claim the rights government was legally obliged to fulfill to the extent possible within available national resources. She worked with local government and community leaders to transform harmful social norms that hindered participation and leadership by all groups in the community, most especially young people, women, and people with disabilities. The woman listened and invited a group of villagers to come to the main island to discuss with government officials local solutions for the development of their island and the realization of their human rights. A plan of action was agreed with the cornerstone of the solutions being non-discrimination, equity, and inclusion, ensuring that all groups in the community were included and benefited from the plan. Solutions did not just include the new boat to travel between the islands. They also included making services available on the small island. Throughout the process, the agency and government officials demonstrated accountability by providing reports of the work done and budgets spent. Soon, everyone was enjoying their rights, with people from both islands able to trade, socialize, and collaborate with one another. Both islands prospered. But that wasn't the end of the story. Village leadership structures, local development projects, and government officials maintained a dialogue, continually finding new ways to improve the lives of local people. A human rights-based approach comprised of participation, linked to rights, accountability, non-discrimination, empowerment, and transforming social norms offers the best chance for community-led, people-centered, and lasting development. For more information about the human rights-based approach and how to apply this approach in your work in your country, please contact SPC RRT or visit the RRT website at rrt.spc.int.
Okay, so I think this is a very significant, very symbolic video that illustrates really the noble, of course, principles of working with the human rights based approach. So we are going to discuss this deeply in the tutorials. Thank you very much.